Are we there yet?
Always squabbling. Why did we even bring them? I need to go to the toilet.
We could drop them off on the way back.
You should have gone before we left. What season are we in, Rick?
It's winter time, Stuart.
Yeah, winter time. It's not Mark, it's Rick. Another race car guy. He's passionate about rotary engines. If it starts with an RX, that's what you do.
Absolutely.
RX-8. So when did you first start with rotaries? What year?
1983.
40 years ago.
Yep. Oran Park
Yeah.
was when I first hit the racetrack in an RX-3. Still learning those, Stu. You
Yeah.
learn something every day.
Rotaries, you just mentioned the word and people think unreliable, blown seals, oil consumption is smelly, noisy. This car, 45, 50 years worth of development by Mazda, and it's actually a really nice car.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's not smelly and it's not noisy and it's super smooth. If you drive it unsensibly in Ric Shaw mode, then it's very thirsty.
It is thirsty, but it's still a lot of fun.
The ride's really compliant. It's sporty, not much roll. The power builds gradually. It's terribly linear all the way up, isn't it?
It is quite linear, and the RX-8 engine's got a multi-staged inlet system, so it's got a series of flaps that open in the inlet manifold at different RPM to give it different power bands, and you can feel those flaps open. And there's one high up in the RPM that opens right at the end, and it gives that little extra power band right at the top end of the RPM scale.
At the opposite end though, you're only running 3,000-4,000 revs coming down here and you're using third gear.
Yes, and that's the beauty of the rotary engine, Stu. You can just leave it in third gear like I am now.
Yeah.
You don't have to shift up. The rotary engine revs so freely that it's happy to just purr along and leave it in the one gear.
It's so smooth at the bottom end too. Anyone that says these things have got no torque, yeah, it's fine, isn't it? Yeah, it's good. Well, we've just seen how it is on a smooth road. This road I know is much more like Australian B roads, quite bumpy. So let's see what the ride's like down here. Do you know this road?
No, I don't actually, Stuart. Keep in mind, the car's still got the original shock absorbers in it, so they're coming up to 20 years old.
Yeah.
You can feel that the sway bars are fairly soft in these cars. There's a reasonable amount of body roll. Even though the steering is quite responsive and sure, you've got a lot of confidence in where you're placing the car and how you're steering the car.
Yeah.
There's still a bit of body roll for a real sports car.
Yeah.
It's probably got a bit much. I think Mazda should have stiffened up the sway bars, made the car sit a little bit flatter. But they probably didn't want to compromise too much comfort.
Yeah.
It is an all-purpose car.
Right, the engine's set well behind the front axle. It's quite a long wheelbase, 2.7 metres. The car's only 4.4 metres long, so there's quite a short overhang along front on it, with the engine, which is very light anyway, set well back. This ride along here is actually very good. For 20-year-old seats, they've actually got quite good bolster support.
Yeah, they're not bad. It's the base car. It hasn't got the leather seats. I actually find the cloth seats more comfortable than the leather seats. They're more appropriate for taller people because you seem to sit a little bit lower in the cloth seat than the leather seat. It gives you a little bit more headroom. It doesn't really matter what gear you're in here, Stuart. The car's happy. I mean, I'm in fourth gear now, and I can be back in third, I can be back in second. The engine's happy to be at whatever RPM I want it to be at. I mean, I could probably even put it, there's fifth gear.
Yeah.
And the car's responsive and it's got the torque.
1800 revs and it's fine.
You know, and it's just going to still roll along very happily here.
Yeah. I noticed about the rotary is that the amount of noise is proportional to the amount of throttle you're using. So it doesn't matter if it's revving right down the bottom or revving right at the top. If you're on light throttle, it's quiet.
Absolutely.
It's only when you stand on it, and it's really only the top end when you stand on it that they get noisy. It's got quite a deep note down low, doesn't it?
It has. Well, this car's had the rear section of the exhaust changed. It's the only thing that's not standard on the car, but it's very subtle. It's a very quiet sports exhaust, if you'll let me say that.
Yeah.
But a lot of people complain to me that the RX-8's too quiet. They can't hear the engine rev. They've got to look at the tacho to see what RPM they're pulling, and that's probably why most of them these days have had the rear mufflers changed.
Yeah.
Not to make them loud, just so you can hear the engine.
It's not big shove in the back, but it builds up nicely.
Yeah. You don't need to. We've got the DSC activating. Did you feel that, Stuart? The car's starting to take control.
Bottomed out just there at the back.
Just a little bit. 20-year-old shocks probably aren't going to handle driving quite as spiritedly as we are at this point of time.
I like the fact that your natural tendency is to roll along in a high gear, like you're in 5th gear now.
Absolutely, and that's what's so good about the RX-8. It can just flow and carry its speed through the corners. There's no need to work the engine hard and drive it like you want to break it.
That was a really rough section back there.
Yeah, it was very rough actually.
Sweet gearbox.
The gearbox is beautiful.
Brakes pretty good.
For standard brakes, they're actually exceptionally good, and there's a lot of really good feel with the brake pedal. You're realising how bad this road is.
Yeah, it is really bad.
And we're actually scraping the back of the exhaust on some of the bad bumps there.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, see, there's masses of torque there. It's fine. It's still not loud. It's just a pleasant little swarm of bees there, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's just got a sports note. It doesn't drone. We don't have to yell to hear each other. It is pleasant, Stu. You're right.
Well, that was fun, Rick. You saw an MX-5. You like rotaries.
I've got to say the RX-8.
Yeah.
Purely because of the engine.
You like MX-5, so don't you?
MX-5 is a fantastic car. I just much prefer the way the the rotary engine works and operates compared to the reciprocating piston engine.
Okay. So if you're looking to buy one, what should you be concerned about? What should you be looking for?
Definitely go with a manual for the driving experience. The early model cars had a different engine in the automatics. It was a less powerful engine.
Okay, that's a Series 1 RX-8.
Series 1 RX-8 had the low power engine.
What was that, 2003 to 2005 or something?
No, 03 to 07.
Oh yeah.
And then from 07 on the Series 2, the facelifted version of the RX-8, they put the high power engine in with the automatics. Now they were okay. But with the Series 1s, I'd stay away from the automatics.
Okay.
And let's face it, if you're going to drive a sports car, it's got to be a manual. It's got to have a shifter.
RX-8, is this an SP?
No, this is your base model RX-8.
Poverty pack, garden variety?
Poverty pack, base model, nice and comfortable. It's got everything you need. A functional sports car.
All right. Now, not too many Ric Shaw shenanigans today.
I know
you.
We'll see. No promises.
Everybody, this is Ric Shaw. That is his real name. You didn't come up with that by deed poll or something, did you? Ric Shaw, as in... I must say your company logo is a little bit offensive. If you want to talk rotaries, there are two people you need to talk to. If you want to do 1,000 horsepower, 16,000 RPM drag racing, make as much noise and flame as possible, probably want to go and talk to Rocky Rahan down at Pack Performance.
Absolutely. Yeah, Rocky built some absolutely remarkable, stupid amounts of horsepower.
But anything else to do with rotary engines, this guy's been around forever. Is that fair enough? Am I not puffing you up too much? 13Bs, 12As, 10As, whatever, that's you.
Yep, going around corners.
20Bs? 20?
Yeah, a lot of 20Bs back in the day. Not so much these days because they're incredibly hard to get your hands on, and very expensive as well nowadays.
And as originally fitted to the Cosmo in Japan, wasn't it? There
That's
was a car
right.
that never came here. Wouldn't it be good if they put a Cosmo motor in this car rather than the twin rotor 13B?
Well, that would just finish the RX-8 off beautifully, I think, if it had a little bit more power, but they were worried, Mazda were worried about fuel consumption, obviously, when they developed this car, and hence it's not a turbocharged car, which is really unfortunate because the RX-7 beforehand, and as you know, Stu, because you've just reviewed the RX-7 SP, was a twin turbo car. And that's what the RX-8 lacks. But having said that, it's one of the most exciting cars to drive, and that's why we like to race them, as we do in the RX-8 Cup.
Which you manage the whole series, don't you?
I do. I own the RX-8 Cup series.
Oh, you own the series?
I do. I started that just over 5 years ago.
And you have how many cars competing now?
We've built something like 45 or more cars, but we've got grids of 25 all the time, as cost effectively as possible. And they're just so well suited to the racetrack. It's like Mazda did such a good job. There's not a lot that needs to be done to be able to put an RX-8 on the track and drive it at full noise as fast as you can and enjoy it.
One make tyre?
We use a Nankang R-Spec tyre, the AR1, and that's a fantastic tyre. So the car's got plenty of mechanical grip, and we use Serco brake pads so the cars stop really well and handle the heat that the brakes generate. So that's a safety feature in itself. But it makes the cars more enjoyable. And they carry their speed on the track so well that corner speeds are much higher than people think. The lap times that these cars are able to do with so few, virtually no modifications.
Affordably?
And affordable is what motorsport can be these days, and we're always looking at ways to make it cheaper.
You're not rebuilding engines every meeting or something?
No. There's guys racing engines that are over 100,000 k's old, and they're still going really well.
Okay.
So that the cars lend themselves to being put on the track beautifully.
Not much to see.
No, it's covered up with this horrible piece of plastic. Notice it's in the shape of a rotor though.
Aha, there it is. It's well behind the axle there.
It is. It's further back than the engine was in the RX-7.
I suppose the reciprocating masses are fairly small in size and weight, I guess.
Well, the rotors in these engines were lighter than any of the rotors in the previous 13Bs. So Mazda really developed the normally aspirated 13B to its maximum potential. 1.3 litres of 9,000 RPM. Goodness, fun.
RX-7s, the FD series 6, 7 and 8, very valuable, and they've all been messed with, and they're rare, and they're expensive.
They are. Well, they were a $90,000 car when they were brand new, and there wasn't as many sold in Australia as what there was RX-8s. So the RX-8s today on the second-hand market are incredibly good value, because sort of $10,000 to $15,000 buys you a functional sports car.
What would it cost to buy a decent, reasonably unmolested FD?
$60,000.
Yeah. Okay. And they're comparable cars, except you haven't got the turbo, so you're missing a bit of torque.
Yes, but the Mazda went this way for emissions, fuel economy, and more reliability compared to the turbo engine. Mazda had developed the engine to maximise the torque right through the rev range, and they did that with changing the port configuration in the engine from the earlier 13Bs, and part of that was to make it more efficient, better on fuel economy and less emissions, because they had to meet the really strict emissions tests in North America, and that made it incredibly hard. So that was another reason they dropped the turbocharger.
I only have one more question. When are you planning on changing your haircut to something from this century?
When I give up motor racing.
I am very excited to be in this car today, not because we're sitting behind a Ford Ranger stuck waiting for a boom gate to open, but because last week, as you pointed out, we were in this incredibly noisy RX-7, and so much of the car was nice, and Mark was very excited about it, as you'll see in the review. If you haven't seen the review, look at that. But I thought, wouldn't it be nice if this car was just quiet and purred along, but had all the great ergonomics, all the things that are good about the RX-7 and RX-8, but without the incredibly blary noise that wears on your nerves. As a passenger car, as a day-to-day, everyday car...
So they gave it 4 doors, they gave it 4 seats, they gave it all the creature features and the comfort that you require in a car.
Yeah.
But it is still very much a sports car, and it steers and drives like a sports car. It handles beautifully, it's got good brakes. It's got a 6-speed gearbox. 5th gear is a 1-to-1 ratio, so it's actually a close ratio gearbox. And the car just, on an open road, it really hugs the road well and it flies along nicely, and you believe you're in a 2-door sports car, but it's actually a sedan.
Something I didn't know, after the success of the RX-7, they were, as you pointed out, concerned with fuel economy and stuff, and the RX-8 almost didn't happen. It was a bit of a skunkworks project. They called it the Gokiburi car in Japanese, which means the cockroach car secret project. And it only got the nod because they said you can only do it if you make it a 4-door car. And they kind of cheated with that, didn't they? It really is a 2-door car, but with the benefit of good, easy access to the rear seats, which are practical.
It's a 2-hour drive, and I've sat in the back of an RX-8 for 2 hours. It's probably as long as I'd want to sit in the back of one.
So can you address those 3 major concerns that people have?
Well, they can be reasonably thirsty, Stu, when they're driven with a heavy foot, but on the open road they're actually not too bad. And the way the gearbox works, being a close ratio, means that the engine's at the right RPM if it's in the it's in the right gear all the time, and that helps with the fuel economy. It helps with the performance.
You know, I think Ric's taking a fairly rosy view. On the open road, yes, you might get as much as 12 litres per 100k, so about 500 kilometres out of a tank. But in urban driving with stop-start traffic, you can expect to get only about 350 k's, so around 18 litres per 100k, which is not great. And also don't trust the fuel gauge once it's down below a quarter. They're a bit flaky down there.
I guess it's probably the offset of owning a Rotary is they can be a little bit noisy when you modify them, and they can be a little bit smelly.
And they're thirsty on oil as well? Is the oil consumption a lot more than a piston car?
Yes, it is. They do use oil, but that's because the engine's got an oil injection system, which is used to lubricate the inside of the engine and stop it wearing. And it uses a sump oil to do that. So you've got to top them up with oil every now and then, and more so than a piston engine. But that's something, it's part of owning a Rotary, and it's the Rotary way of life, and you get used to that pretty quickly.
And regarding reliability, these engines love to rev. And they'll happily go to 9,000 RPM all day long, but not 9.5, not 10,000, which is easy to do if you're not paying attention, or pinging the limiter or free revving them on down changes. They hate that. That is how you kill an RX-8 motor.
Well, this car, Stu's coming up to 20 years old now. It's got 130,000 Ks on it, and it's still on the original engine. Hasn't been touched. So I don't think that's too bad. If it's like any engine, if they're well looked after, they can serve a fairly good lifespan. It's when people modify Rotary engines that they become unreliable fairly easily, particularly the turbo cars. And look, Mazda had trouble with the seals early on in the piece, many years ago with the RX-2s and the RX-3s, and that's pretty much been remedied now. And the Rotary engine's as reliable as most other piston engines are these days.
Now, a lot of people get hung up about compression testing as a means to determining if a Rotary has seals that are on the way out. So if it starts okay when it's cold, but it's hard to start when it's hot, that might be the first indicator of low compression. But that's not the full story. That's not the be-all and end-all. A motor with compression on the low side might still be okay, and a motor with high compression might be about to let go for other reasons. Now, I don't want to create the impression these motors are unreliable. If you service them properly, change the oil every 10,000 K, and keep them revving, not beyond red line, as Ric says, they will last a long time.
But you love modifying them, so why haven't you modified this car?
Well, this is an example of a nice, clean, straight, standard RX-8, and it can be enjoyed in its, natural habitat, so to speak. We've got too many race cars in the stable at the moment to worry about modifying another road car.
Okay. What do you think it's worth if you were to sell it?
A car like this now, 130k on it, 04, 05 model in reasonable condition, is between about $10,000 and $13,000.
Well, to prove that or not, here's Stu checking on car sales. Over to you, Stu.
Yes, thanks very much, Stu. Here's what I found. Remember, this is just the asking price before you start to haggle. What Ric neglected to mention was this one that he's selling that I found on Facebook Marketplace. Under $9,000. Come on, Ric, why didn't you tell me?
Woohoo! So, steep hill, normally aspirated rotary motor.
Back to first, Stu, on this one.
It goes all right. Goes very well. Hey. 35k advisory speed. Luckily it's only advisory. Well, despite what you describe as being rubbish tyres, it's actually pretty good, Rick.
A
Okay,
little bit of push in the front there, Stu.
a little bit.
Like the tyres are stone cold. They need to warm up.
It's good though. Excellent. That was good.
No, and you can see the engine coming up the hill there was happy to
It's smooth.
sing along at any RPM.
I get it that the people that love the turbo, the big kick in the pants, because the turbo rotary is a special thing, but the more boost you get out of them, the less reliable they are. Is that fair enough?
It is, and we found with the race cars in RX-8 Cup will cope with that sort of driving and even harder driving at right up to 9,000 RPM. You know, all day long over a race weekend without any problems and issues, and they just love to be revved.
But I think the thing with this car, what makes this car really special is the chassis. It feels like a long, it's just not a big car, but it feels like a long wheelbase car. How's the turning circle?
Actually, the turning circle on these is not bad at all.
That's brilliant. Okay, I think that's enough turning.
Getting dizzy, Stu? That this car is a daily driver. It's functional, it's comfortable, it's got all the creature features you could possibly want in a road car. And it's got some really good performance. You know, it hasn't got 1,000 horsepower, but it carries its speed well because it's so well balanced, and it's just an exciting sports car. They did a limited edition of a sports model which was called the GT, and it had Recaro seats and different trim, some different stitching, different wheels, but mechanically same engine, same gearbox, same performance. They did change the gearing slightly with a diff ratio in the Series 2 model, just to make it accelerate a little bit quicker.
Okay. 6-speed manual.
6-speed manual in the Australian market. Overseas it came with a 5-speed,
Okay.
which was pretty much the same gearbox that they ran in the RX-7.
No brakes. Are they up to the job?
The brakes are fine. It's a 324mm disc rotor on the front.
That's big for a roadie.
It is not a small disc rotor, Stu, particularly considering it's a disc rotor on nearly a 20-year-old car.
Yeah.
They've got good brakes, and that comes back to Mazda developing and designing the car as a sports car.
Yeah. What are the standard fitment shock absorbers in the car?
The Mazda shocks are a Takiko shock absorber, and in these cars they weren't anything special at the time. The second generation cars came out with the Bilstein shock absorber,
Did they?
which was much better. Yeah, Bilsteins came in the GT model.
Bit of luggage space, not much in the back. You've got a space saver in the boot, as in you can't take big luggage with you.
Well, you'd have to take the space saver out of the boot, Stu, and travel with no spare tyre to give you the room to put luggage in the back.
Yep.
It's been a fantastic day. We couldn't have picked a better day, but it's been a lot of fun, and thanks everyone for joining us and reviewing the RX-8.
So thanks for watching inCARnation. See you next time. Special guest host. Should we invite him back? I think we might. How'd you like to review an electric car next time?
Absolutely, why not?
I didn't expect you to say that.
As we all know, a lot of driving enjoyment comes from how a car steers and feels behind the wheel. Precise, nimble, balanced, grippy. That's more important to us than horsepower. There's no point having a rocket sled if the steering is lifeless. The MX-5 is a great car like that. And if you need to take some extra passengers once in a while, the RX-8 is also a really involving sports car. Neither is particularly powerful, but they're both excellent fun. And you'll probably find an RX-8 significantly cheaper on the second-hand market. But that cash you saved, you will be spending on petrol. Thanks for watching inCARnation Australia today. Please have a look around the channel. There's bound to be something there to amuse you, and we'll see you next time.
Turn around and show us your haircut that you got in the 1970s and you've never changed. Sorry, I had to get that in, viewers. Just for fun, here's pictures of Rick in the 1980s racing. Oh, and the 1990s. Actually, how many times have you been to Nürburgring and raced?
10 times I've done the 24-hour.
Yeah?
Last time we won our class. And a couple of times I've been there and done the 12-hour.
Oh hey, you made it right through to the end of the video. Congratulations. Thank you for watching. If you like what you see, please share it with your motoring friends. And above all, click the little subscribe thing down here so you can see the latest videos when we bring them out, hopefully each week. I look forward to seeing you soon.